Hello and welcome back for another episode of our Mega-lo-Mania in Unreal Engine 4. So, had a few days since Friday where we were working on the kind of core menus, and we still have this mass ton of menus and icons and stuff. Now, in the current implementation, we were just working on having an actor, and the actor had many actor components, and we'd arranged everything, and while it looks like that's working, I can't shake the feeling that it should really be a UI element. So what I'm going to try and do today is create a widget and use the UI widget as these icons instead. And then once we've got that set up in approximately the right place, we can tie up all the click events a bit better. Because the issue I have primarily with the control menu, be it control menu 1 or control menu 2, was how to determine what was clicked, particularly with the way that the click events were happening. We weren't handling clicks on each of the individual actor components, because it's kind of by default it's not tied up like that. We can do it. You can enable the click events excuse me, for actors. You can handle the clicks then, but as I say, that's not how it is by default, so it seems like it might be better to not do it that way. So we're going to start with creating a new user interface widget blueprint. I'm going to call that the control menu. I think a new name that I came up with was the root menu, because it's always the bottom. The way that the menus work is you kind of go into one, you come out of it, you go into another, you come out of that. So we'll call this one the root menu. And we'll start by getting lost in all the little controls there. Start by just putting our first image down, and one thing that I was trying to do before was this space was kind of perceived to be resized to the left hand panel as such, but we're just going to take this as the window as a whole, and therefore try and work on things being relative to that box as the entire window. So we're going to actually position our image with size to content, and we'll select the content. Can't remember what the guy's called. There we go. Might need better names for these moving forwards, but I'm going to put him over here somewhere. So it's size to content, and we want to anchor him. We always want, I guess we always want it relevant, not relevant, relative to the bottom left hand corner, because that's kind of where the menu builds up from. So we'll just jump into a game on the proper original, so we have some points of reference, and it's quite a small little image, at least on this fairly large screen size. We'll stick with that, and then we'll go into the I think the level blueprint. We had it before. So this bit's handling the click events, so we just want the construction part. Events do we have here on begin play? Oh, there we go. And yeah, so we're binding some on selected events and binding some click event stuff. All of that can stay. They're not going to cause any problems for now. And so another thought that I had was that while at the moment I'm just going to quickly drop it in as a standard widget, it might be better to kind of pipe it through all the HUD type components. So I might have a go at that depending on how this goes. So we need to back into the game. Somewhere here we displayed the, so just trying to find where I've set the render parts. So the research menu, hidden in game, that's hidden in game, hide that in game, hide that in game, so we can just hide all the other original stuff. Now we just got to see how we can get our little man on there. So maybe we'll start with actually putting him up on the top left hand corner. Might be easier for us to find him if he's there. Yeah, so we can barely see him. As I've said before, the bit that kind of put me off was the kind of image scaling doesn't map well to the image scaling that we have of the actors. So we've got to try and figure that out. So we've got such a big area, so maybe we need to make the screen size smaller. There's no preset there for the size that we want. So the original game runs in about 640 by 400. 640 by 400. So we'll try setting this to 640 by 400. Almost. There we go. And see if that makes any difference. Nope, still really small. So the scale is set for 1 and 1. It should be fine. What else have we got? Obviously the size X and size Y gets taken from the content, so we don't really need the size X and size Y. So it is saying that the image is 16 by 16. Let's just find out what whereas this little icon in this context is actually 32 by 32, so the icon shown there is twice as big. So what we can do then is see if we can find the scale of the image. Yes, so we're looking at the scale of the image, and we'll just double that. So the little man's a little bit better, but it's still really small. I don't quite know where it's shrinking it or where it's making it smaller. See, just if we take a print screen of that, and yeah, so the little man's actually being rendered at 16 by 16. So somewhere along the line, when it was rendering it the first time, rather than it rendering it at 16 by 16, which is the size of the image, it was rendering it at half that. Probably something to do with the DPI scale. How do we get that to sort itself out? Okay, so we set the DPI scale rule to custom, and then I changed nothing else, and the DPI scale rule down here is reset to 1. So now let's have a look. Oh, okay, that's much better. Now if we take a quick screenshot of that, replace that, and measure him. Yeah, now he's the 32 by 32 that we want. Hello, Howard. So now he's the right size. That's one problem solved. Now let's try and put him in the right place. So where's his position? His position's marked here, so we can try and take the rough position of about 80 by 268. And play that. So now if we get the original game window, position it over the top, and we should, yeah, so not everything at the moment is kind of in the correct place. The little guy is actually quite far away from where I'd have expected him to be. The mini-map's obviously not in the same place, so kind of it's all of the little images are a bit in the wrong place. Huh. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for hosting. So we've got the little man on there in about the right place. He's probably a bit low. Yeah, of course he's a bit low. I didn't take into account the header area. So there's this bit here. So he's about 268, like we said, and then another 25 down. So we need to account for that by pushing him up by about 25. So that'll be 43, 40, 240. And see how that works. Should be much closer. Which one is the one we want? That one. And play. Position them over there. That'll do. It's not perfect, but none of it's perfect at the moment, but he's in approximately the right place. Okay, so we'll now add all the other images that we want, and 6 by 40. Yeah, depending on the platform it was. I think the actual window size in here is 640 by 480. It's just the header you have to account for that I didn't quite before. So it's 640 by 400. Yeah, I guess the 80, I don't know where the 80's gone. It's just the resolution this particular version plays at. So we need the other icons. They should all be in the sprites. I'll actually show the, it's a bit laggy for some reason, show the original as my picture. So we need a standard horizontal arrow. Yeah, this drops it in as images, so that's fine, so we can just drag it from one to another. Resize that one. And so in this particular space we have 2 hand gathering resources, and I think it's that one we want for the up arrow, and should be 2 green ones somewhere. Let's look on past them, there we go. So by the fact there's only 2 green ones, it must mean that that's really the only and maximum amount that one can hand gather, those 2 green ones. And we want the light bulb, the little shield, the sword. That's the big light bulb. I think the little one's down here. Take the shield, the sword, We know we'll need the defense one a bit later on. The light bulb. So all these images are being dropped in at whatever random size it seems to choose. But once we do size to content, hopefully they'll all actually look all consistent with each other. So we'll just take the two resources that we know we need for this map as well, our stone and slate. Okay, now let's see if we can sort these out. So all of the images need to be size to content, so we can check that for all of them. And again, we'll only roughly place them where we need them, partly because it's awkwardly laggy at the moment, and also because they don't really need to be perfect just yet. So some of the icons, well, the icons for the different sub-menus, repair, defense, attack, research, they're always going to be in the same place. They are almost always available. I mean, obviously we can see that defense isn't immediately until you've researched some defense. I think the light bulb remains even after you've done all the research. We've got obviously the factory and the mines, which come in later. Now those two arrows for me look like they're the same picture. Even though the icon, the sprites are actually different, but nonetheless. So what we can do, let's see. So we've got a grid panel, horizontal panel, overlay, safe zone, scale box. So at some point it might be worth kind of grouping together the arrows, because we never need it to do anything with the arrows, and at certain times certain arrows will need to be shown, but I can't see necessarily a good kind of container for them. We'll just go through. So the man in the middle we don't actually interact with, but he does change the image. So we'll call him the tech man. Because his image will change when we do different, when we go up in different tech levels. So we'll definitely need to reference him. And that's bolded it and made it a variable. I guess it did that by default. That one says it's a variable too, but it hasn't bolded it. But we don't need it as a variable. And we don't need that one as a variable. So all the arrows, just turning off the variable, it seems to get rid of its unique name, which is fine, because we... Okay, that's not 100% true, is it? These two green arrows we do need to reference at some point, because we'll need to hide them. So we'll have that as... So they're normally... The green ones represent the gathering of resources kind of by hand, so we'll call it gather arrow. Hopefully that will continue to make sense moving forwards. So I think that one needs this variable checked. Yep. So, oh. Doesn't really matter what number it is, I just put it on the wrong one. So it says that one is our longer one and that one is our shorter one. Not that I've named them particularly well. In this context, the longest one is at the bottom. Okay, so they are the right way round. So that's our repair, our we'll call it combat, army, or things like that. Doesn't sound so good. That will be research. Defense. Research. So this obviously is the stone icon at this point, but this represents kind of the hand gathering resource. I can't remember which one is shown by default, shown if you're only getting one, so we'll assume that the first one is. So we'll just call this resource 1, and this one resource 2. So within the game, whether you click on resource 1 or resource 2, we always go to the same screen, the element stocks, as it calls it. So that covers all of those. So we'll actually research one of the defense, so we can get that defense icon in place. And that will also give us the blueprint icon. So we'll see if we can find that one. There we go. That one there. That one goes up in that corner. Look at size to content. Don't know why it's being so laggy, but power through. So that should, once it starts up, show us all of those icons there. Yeah, so the two green arrows, they are either I've used the same image when I've cut them out, or I've just copied the same one twice or something like that. I don't really know. I mean, they do look different here. That one says it's 30 starting at 16 going down. And this one come on. Not having it. Oh, I'm probably doing it from the wrong place, aren't I? From here. So this one's 22 down. So they are different sizes from that perspective. That says long 1 and that says long. And image size is 32. That's 32. So somewhere along the line the image size has gone a bit weird, because it's not 32 by 32. Maybe it went wrong when I selected everything and changed size to content. It set the size of all the images to the size of one of the images. So we'll just toggle it between those two arrows. Zoom into it so we can see which one's which. So yeah, now they actually look distinct. They are the wrong way round. That's better. So we also want to make sure their scale. So at the moment we've put the scale on all of the individual icons. lag is being quite irritating. See if that helps. So no, it doesn't seem to be what was causing it. Yeah, so we've applied the scale on all of the individual icons themselves. It might actually be more efficient to apply the scale on the canvas panel instead. Obviously, that's going to make everything that's already scaled up by 2 even bigger, which we'll have to go through and reduce it down again. So we'll go into this one. Image size. No, they don't. Can't remember where the scale was. I'm sure I applied it to the images before, but it seems not to be the case. Let's see what that actually looks like. Yeah, they've all gone completely off the screen. Perhaps because scaling the whole thing has actually meant that it's now the whole screen is double the size. They should have been anchored to the same point there. For the time being, we'll leave the scale as 1. Yeah, so that we can see that the window box here and that box there wasn't the same. But I can make that one half the size. So it'll be 320 by 150. It's quite difficult because it doesn't move smoothly at the moment. I don't know how to edit that kind of with numbers rather than doing the drag and drop kind of movement, so always undo this if it doesn't work. Select all my images. Try and move them back on my screen. Yeah, so I think some of them are actually, the screen is scaled by 2 and then all of the images individually is scaled by 2, so they're completely not fitting right now. I don't know why it's going so slow. Can't edit it properly with it so laggy. What's hogging? Editor maybe. Yeah, okay. Maybe it's just Unreal Engine, so I'm just gonna restart it. See if it behaves better. If it even goes away. Start it again. Also good. Just trying to rearrange those elements within the window that where it's barely moving was not easy. Excuse me. Here we go, render transformation. So I need to make sure each of the images themselves are not scaled by 2. And the canvas panel is scaled by 2. So what does that look like? It's still throwing all of the resources off the screen completely. So that's the issue that I had before as well. It's not clear really what's the viewable space from the see if that helps. Certainly doesn't like scaled movement. Let's put this back. Now we're all in the middle. Nope. It's a bit of a guessing game. Where to put the... I guess there is actually the scale here, isn't there? There's size on. There's positioning information on both sides, so perhaps try and use that to better position it now. Now that I've seen it. So again, it's still annoyingly laggy. Once I've got these in place, I'll not change the screen anymore. It seems it's quite tedious to get them in the right place. Yeah, so the little man. This didn't work before. Yeah, so this box, this inner box, is the kind of visible space. Oops. But the bigger box is kind of scaled up, and it just causes it to go weird. Like our sword now is 4 times as big. I'll turn it up a bit. Sorry about that. I am perhaps mumbling a bit at the complaint of why this scaling doesn't do what it looks like it should do. So we've currently got the icons that are twice the size, even though they don't say they are twice the size, being effectively 4 times the size. So if I scale the canvas back to 1 and 1, the little man is still really small. And he's not scaled. And nor apparently is the blueprint. So maybe the man really is just 16 by 16. Maybe I've copied that from the wrong texture. Let's have a look at the icons. So we've got this set of icons which contains our men up in the top corner. That one there. So edit the source regions and select that one. How much does that say it is? Can't edit it here. But it does say it's 16 by 16. But let's say, so we've got the blueprint one. So that's 16 by 16 for the little man on the top corner. And we'll use the blueprint one for comparison, and that too is 16 by 16. So it's not clear to me why our little man is showing it 16 by 16, and yet our blueprint is showing it 32 by 32, even though size to content is still ticked. It's like, that's not the content size. And we can fix it by making the little man 32 by 32, but then obviously that's kind of affecting all of the scaling. I'm not sure if it's better to just resize him like that or use the scale, rendering scale. But given at the moment all the rest seem to be 32 by 32. It's probably because, again, when I did size the content, I had all of them selected. I think maybe I've got to, because this arrow is 32 by 32 and it shouldn't be. So we change it to the left one and then back to the right one. Yeah, so it's gone really small again. So what we'll do is we'll leave size the content on, but I'll just switch all the icons out and back again in again. Would be a bit quicker if it still wasn't laggy, but it's still, performance still isn't doing so great. But yeah, so once we've done all this, at least then all the icons are going to be consistent sizes. And then we can scale the canvas and then just reposition it so it fits, and we should be fine. Clicking that arrow did not help. Let's find the sword again now. There we go. Nope. That one instead. Doesn't seem to be a quick way to refresh the icon, so to continue doing it as we were. So it's safe to say that multi-selecting and trying to size to content actually seems to size all of the icons to the size of probably whichever icon I had selected first, and it's the icons rendering size, which in that case, because I'd scaled it, it was 32 by 32. So I made all of my icons 32 by 32. I think them two are fine, so I've already done them. But this is at least putting them all back to what they should be. So now we're seeing the icons at their original size, all 16 by 16, except for the arrows that obviously are slightly different sizes. Once we've got them all in place, we can, oh actually we just need to rearrange them all on the canvas, get all the icons back aligned. So I don't think the icons in game would really fit. There is actually kind of, I guess, some kind of grid to them, particularly the ones across the top. But obviously this kind of second row wouldn't necessarily fit. But there might be a way to use the horizontal spacers or horizontal panels and stuff to kind of align them. But so I want to focus more on the interaction with them than the layout. Once I've got the basic layout working, I'll probably try and put them into appropriate containers and organize it a bit better within the hierarchy of the widget. Just one more to go. Okay, so let's have a look what that looks like. Yeah, so it's approximately in the right place. It's obviously all very small, so hopefully if we just change the canvas panel, maybe we'll just change the root, see what the root's like, to 2 and 2. Zoom out here, play it again. So that might actually push it all off screen, yeah. So we've changed the canvas, we changed the root in that case. So let's try, see if there's any difference with changing the canvas panel itself to a scale of 2 and 2. I think the end result is going to be the same. We're not going to be able to see anything, so it all pushes them out. Because it looks like it's 2 times whatever this inner box is, and the inner box is or was set at the resolution. So we'll bring that down to I think we started at 600 by 400, but we'll take it to 600 by 400 again. So it's really rough because it's just so laggy. Yeah, so the main window size is set at 600 by 400 more or less, but the 2 times scale pushes it out. So in theory, if we set the main size to half of that, 300 by 180 will do. See if that works. No, so it still looks like anything that's not in the grey box doesn't get shown on screen, whether I make it 2 times or not. Just waiting for it to close. It's really bad. So we can put this back at 640 by 480 or 600 by 400. 600, 400. There we go. And I'll just move the icons into the screen by putting them into this kind of light grey box. Eventually. It's not been this laggy before. I don't know if it's the engine or something else getting in the way, really. Okay, let's see what it looks like now. Okay, so there, again, not perfect position, probably because our screen size is actually slightly smaller than we intended it to be.
again, I think that's because there's some kind of black border above and below that we haven't quite got figured out, because it says here 577 by 370. So we're not quite got the resolution that we were aiming for. Might actually just been because it lagged out on me when I let go. But we'll work with it where it is, because otherwise we'll spend the entire time moving little images around. We're going to try and get the research submenu to work. So we have on mouse button, is that down? On mouse button down? Is that the only event that we have for this one? Now maybe they have to then be buttons to get more control over it. That's just going to be a bit of a pain if I have to go and restructure it all with buttons. Because we only have the on mouse button down event for our research. Now, that might be okay. At least that's how it currently works. Oh, damn, didn't mean to do that. I quit. So the on mouse button down might work, but typically user interfaces don't react to the down, they react to the up. Although it does vary a lot depending on the user interface. It gives the user the ability to kind of change their mind. They can click down and then realise they didn't want to click down on that, move away and move up and click up, and then they wouldn't actually action what they perhaps has clicked on. So for these kind of bindings, the return node needs a return value, which suggests it shouldn't be empty. We're just saying that it's handled. What am I calling the... Yeah, I think that's actually the right one. Compile that and get rid of that warning. So here, are we clicking on a particular thing? I don't think we are we? I think we're just clicking on the canvas as a whole. The canvas panel doesn't have any events that we can tie to, and the root doesn't specifically have. But our research is bound to our function, and we'll do the combat one as well. Yes, I think we can rename these functions here, although it says on research mouse button down, so we're okay with that. I didn't realise that that was the case. So within our research button down event, we want to tell the level to change what we see. We could have other widgets. We could have a parent widget, and we'd put the root menu and the research menu and all that inside that widget, and then control it at that level. But for now, we'll just use the level to control which menu we're seeing. So we'll go back into the main game. We'll create our user interface for our research menu. We'll call it research menu W, because we've got all the other actors getting in the way. Of our name, so that'll do for now. This one, to make it quick, resize it to the appropriate size that we want, 600 by 400, and we'll just drop in the big light bulb image, which is the kind of return to the other screen, and we'll call that the we'll call it back button or back. We'll just call it back. That'll do for now. Thought that was meant to be a wider one. Maybe I didn't use the right one there, but let's compare it to that one. They are slightly different, but that one's not really as wide as I expected. Maybe it's further down. So we'll find the right icon. No. It's resized it to 32 by 32 again for some reason. Even though this one shouldn't be 32 by 32. Not that the name of that icon is particularly good, but perhaps it's just the order in which I'm doing things. I'm selecting the image, I'm selecting resize, it gets all confused. Once I've got resize and then I select the image, it seems to work okay. So just so that we've got consistency, this one has our screen size here scaled up, doesn't it? And that's off the screen again, so I'm probably going to have to fix that. But the canvas on this one is scaled to 2, and the size of the screen is probably about 2, or defaulted to 1024 by 720, but whichever. We know that the we want the canvas panel to be scaled to 2, so we'll just apply that. Again, we'll try and fix the view size and the scale size at a later point. So I might just have to move some stuff to get it on screen, but so in our graph, when we click down on the mouse button down on the research menu, or the research button as it is, we want to trigger an event to change the menu. We're going to have many buttons that are going to change the menu from and to many things, and rather than having individual events now for each individual thing, we'll have one event called change menu, or on change menu, and we'll call that here. And we'll also add to that details are down here for this one. We'll add to that an input, and the input we'll use is in our UI. We'll create a new blueprint enumeration. We'll create a new enumeration, and we'll call that menu enum, and we'll have the root menu. We'll work clockwise as we have in other occurrences. Probably matters less in this case because they're going to be named, and we're not going to necessarily reference them from any other contexts. Let's just put this back in. It's good for reference. But the one kind of mostly at the top from our previous iterations over here would be the defense. So we'll start with the defense and then called it combat, and each of the resources won't necessarily have their own, and we know also that we can, if we're mining stuff or if we're gathering stuff by hand, it's just the same place really. It's going to be displayed in a similar way depending on quite where the resources are coming from. So there's no distinction between whether you're mining or collecting. The individual menu widget would handle that display. So that would be resources, and then we have research and blueprints and repair. Now there's a few more that we don't have. We don't have the factory building one, or actually the building one as a whole. I think it is possible to build multiple buildings, and you do that from the same kind of core menu, even though quite often you don't have many buildings being built at one time. When you start in some of the later epochs where all the buildings are already effectively unlocked, then you might want to be able to build more than one at a time and kind of divide the men across those buildings. So we'll have a building menu moving forwards. But for now, again, to prevent overdoing it, we'll just leave it as that. And within our root menu and our event, so we've actually put the event dispatcher on the root menu, which means we're going to have another event dispatcher on the research menu, and so on and so forth. It might be worth doing it perhaps the other way round. See if we can do that. So we'll create an event dispatcher here. Yeah, so we can call it from the context of the menu, but to do that we'd need a target. Don't know if we can get access to the level, and even if we could, I'm not quite sure that we'd want to. Yeah, so we probably could do it that way round, but I'm not sure that that would be the right way round to do it, even though by doing it the other way round, by doing the events in the widgets themselves, every time we create a new widget to display, we'd have to make sure the level binds to that event. So we'll be binding and unbinding multiple times, particularly if we're changing the, if the level can interact, sorry, if the menu can interact with the level with more than just which menu to show, then again we'll have to bind to many events rather than just an individual event from the level context. But we'll go for this way around first, and we'll also have to define this dispatcher on each of the different widgets that we have. So there may be a better way to kind of remove that duplication, kind of like what we were doing with the actors, where we have this base class that they inherit from, so that we always have a common set of code. But for now we'll stick with this, and we'll say that is that. So the input to our function is which menu to show, and we can select it here to say when we click the research button, we want to call the onChange menu event and show the research menu. And we'll take the call on menu. I don't think we can actually do that, can we? So we'll come back over here, the graph. Note the designer first. Find our icon. Bind that event, the click event here, within our research menu. Make sure the event is handled. So the advantage in this case is that we can now call this event with any of the menus. So in certain sub-menus, or even the root menu as a whole, it's got buttons to go to any different menu. By using this event dispatcher consistently across all of the different menus, and by providing the menu to show argument in all of them, which is our menu enum. Oops. We should be able to quite easily switch between all the different menus that we want. So now in the level blueprint, where we are creating the root menu widget, we want to that one, bind to the onChange menu event. Is that in the right place? And to handle that, we'll actually use the create event, something that I recently learned about, and we can select now a function to handle that in. So we want to create a new function over here, and we'll call this as on change menu. Not necessarily certain that all my event dispatcher names and my events themselves are all correctly named, but why does it not pick up my function? No, that's not working as I expected. I thought that I could select the function I want. That one. But it's not in my list. Unless it's because the function signature is wrong. Let's delete that. So on change menu of our root menu. Back over here. Our root menu, on change menu should have an enum value. That seems fine here. Maybe I actually have to make the input of this. That would make some sense. Now can we select it? Ah, that's it. Yeah, so we had to make sure that the function signature, effectively the inputs for that function, mapped to the event signature. And there we go. So now if we jump in here and we can do the good old print string to verify we're all okay. Now likenesses, oh actually it's rendered about where we need it. We can click that and we can see that this event is occurring and we're printing out some research. So now what we can use is our select, and we pass in our enum, which gives us all of these different values. And what we need to do is, where's our main event? Yep. So we need to create a widget for each of those. Now, what I'm unsure of is the efficiency of doing it this way, because where have I gone? what we don't really want it to do is create all of these yeah, I wonder why that's happened. We don't really want it to create all of these widgets every time this select is called, but I'm going to assume that that doesn't happen and it only actually creates the one we want based on this enum value. I'll have to do some checking to see if that's true or not, but yeah, probably we don't want that, but I'm not sure how best we can get the right widget, because we can't refer to the widget as a class unless we can we get a class? Get class, root menu, return value root. Oops. This might be a slightly cleaner way to do it, because it certainly won't. There we go. And now we've tidied it all up, I think we can just do it this way. So that one's there, and research menu widget. So it's difficult to see, but we've selected on the root, we've selected root menu. On the research, we've selected research menu. The others haven't got a class specified at the moment. So the return value is actually going to be a class. Then we can use the create widget. Create widget, that's what we want. And we can actually pass that class straight in. Can we? Class reference is not compatible with user widget class reference, but it is a user widget class reference. Oops. Doesn't seem like there's any other option there. Object class reference. Maybe we just have to cast it, but casting it seems a bit weird because we haven't actually got an instance of it, we've just got it. But that actually worked, so tie that up. We don't need the print string anymore. Okay, so in this case we can take our change menu event or function effectively. We can select the appropriate widget, we can cast it, create that widget, and now we just need to set add it to the viewport. And we can kind of test this because, nicely enough, this complete function is completely reusable within the main code, and we'll be able to tie up that event. So we can take those two nodes. Okay, we won't cut it completely yet. We'll disconnect that. We will copy those, paste them over here. So before we add it, we want to bind to it. Ah, okay. Yeah, the binding is going, it needs the specific class because it's not a base class. So I have to come back to that one again. Because this is returning a generic class that we're converting to a generic user widget class. The user widget class doesn't actually have a an event, and the return value here is again a user widget object reference, whereas in the event graph we're creating a root menu widget and the return value is a root menu object reference value. So it's not quite the same thing. But we can call our function, perhaps not the bestly named one anymore, but it works. And we can say we want to show the root. Now, for demonstration purposes, we can cast that to a root menu. And then we can, oh actually we're already viewing, already adding it to viewport by on change menu. Maybe that's not necessarily the best idea, but we cast it to the root menu, and now we can use these two just to keep that binding alive and working. Now all we need to actually get the object. So in our on change menu, we can add to this a output, and the only thing that we can output at the moment is our user widget type. It's kind of our base class for all of our widgets, and I assume it's a reference of, but I'm not sure how to explicitly say. Yeah, object reference, class reference. Okay, good. Object reference is what we wanted. Oh, need to tie up our return value. Compile that. We gotta go back to the level blueprint, to the event graph, and tie that up. That should be happy. That's not. So because the event doesn't actually handle the return, we can't use the event signature anymore. We can fix that by giving it the appropriate output. Can we? No, it doesn't look like our event can have an output. Okay, that's okay. What we'll do is we'll change this function to be just change menu, and then we'll have on change menu, and this one will have the signature that we need, which will be the menu and the menu enum. And all this will do is call change menu with the appropriate, oh, get my pin side up, enum, and it doesn't care about the return value from that function, at least not at the moment. And we go back over here. Change menu is adding it to the viewport and our event graph here. So we call the change menu function with the root right at the beginning. We cast that to a root menu so we can bind to the appropriate event, which can now call our on change menu event. Our on change menu event over here will simply call change menu. So hopefully we'll be able to go from the root menu to our research menu. No, it did not work. One thing that did work though was that we are seeing the right menu. Our level blueprint is going into our change menu function. So actually coming into change menu, we're setting the root. We could actually set that to the research to prove that that's working. And while we don't see anything because we haven't organized that correctly, haven't positioned the icon in the right place, we can see there's not showing the original on change menu function. The cast would fail and the event wouldn't be tied up, but that's not a problem. So we want to keep it as root, which we can see here. so I think all these background stuff is actually all the old stuff, so I'm going to take these out. Because I think the output we saw on screen was these things showing up because they were still there but not there. So there'll be some errors here. Just take that out. Yeah, basically all of that's not going to be used anyway. I think I'm happier with it being a proper set of widgets. Okay, so now let's see. We are still getting some string cast fails there. I'm not quite sure where they're from because there shouldn't be anything left on the screen. Perhaps I'm clicking the minimap or something. But the problem is our root menu, research mouse button down, is that actually working? So we can run the game and click and no, it doesn't seem like it's working at all. Just getting cast fails. Root menu, designer. See if the binding still exists. The binding still at least looks like the correct one. See if it actually fires a breakpoint at all. Yeah, so we do get the breakpoint. Okay, so if we step over that, we're going into the cool on change menu. We'll go into that. Yep, so we'll go into the on change menu part. Our enum value is research, so we'll step over that. We'll call it going into change menu. We've got research as our appropriate choice. Research is filled in. So step over. It does look like the cast worked. Well, we'll find out when we step over. Yeah, so the cast worked. We've got the right class. Step over. We're adding it to the viewport. Oh, okay, I see what's happening. Yeah, so our research menu, when it shows up, doesn't actually show up anyway, so we need to fix the fact that we can't see the research menu quickly in the game. No, in the research menu, designer. Let's try and get that icon somewhere where we can see it. Again, the graphing area is being really slow. Come on. There we go. So I'll just try and put it into the lighter grey box. Let's see first if that works. And we can also go into the game and by default display our research, and that'll help speed up the process of getting it visible. So we can compare. This one has scale of 2, canvas panel, it's 1280 by 720, and our root menu root menu is the same size here, same DPI. So maybe it would just be better if it was over here somewhere. So our current icon is actually kind of sitting at some very weird position. Our little middleman icon, 196 by 192, but at least it's on screen. So that's not actually that far off, so we should be able to see it now. There we go. Okay, so it's not great, but it's there. I'll have to try and figure out what's causing it to be so laggy and fix that up. So put the root back, pile and play, remove the breakpoint, just remove it, resume. Yeah, so now we can see the light bulb turn up. We'll play it again so we don't have the breakpoint. We click the research icon and the light bulb turns up. We click that and nothing happens. So what we need to do is to get the current item off the viewport. We really only want one menu shown at once, and in the current way that it's going, there's only going to be one widget shown, and that will be the menu. That may not be the same moving forwards, so perhaps we don't want to kind of trap ourselves with that. But we know the change menu function runs, so what we can do is, for the return value of our creation, we've created this user widget. We can right click on the little pin and promote to a variable, and we want to set it, so we just join that up into the chain. And now we have a variable, and we'll just take that straight out. So this would be menu widget, and within our menu widget, within our change menu, we want to say if the menu widget, I think it's is valid. Yep. I think that's why. I don't know what, because there's an is valid function. Okay, so the is valid function gives us a Boolean return value, whereas the is valid grey box is obviously kind of branching the code flow. So in this case, which would be easier, I think we can tie both of them. Can we tie both of them up to there? Yeah, so in this case, this one probably is slightly nicer. If it is valid, we want to remove it from the viewport. Maybe the answer is just destroy it. The one is this one. So we could check if it is in the viewport. We could add it to the viewport, add it to play screen. How do we get rid of it? Remove from parent. Okay, let's try that one. Let's see if that works. Play. So now if we click the light bulb, hopefully it will get rid of it. There we go. Not ideal, because it doesn't go back. That might be because our return function isn't tied up yet. So we only tie it up if it's the menu. So I think create a user interface widget blueprint. So we can't seem to create a widget blueprint that inherits from one of our other widget blueprints, at least not within the blueprint scope. So the event tying up is going to be a bit awkward because all of the widgets is going to need its own event. We're going to need to cast it to its own thing. So I'm probably going to have to see if there's a better way to do that. Because we don't want to really we kind of nicely here are able to determine which class and then create whichever widget we want to show, but we actually want to tie up the appropriate events, which we're currently doing in this bit of code here by casting it to the root menu and binding to the onChange menu event. That's going to be more awkward if we have to cast effectively the menu into all of the different types. We're going to have a chain of all the cast fails to the next cast to the next cast. Then if we add more menus or change the menus, we're going to have to retie them up. So that doesn't sound that great. I'd like to think there's a better way of doing it, but I'll have to do some research into figuring out what the best way of handling that is. Whether there's a way to get a bit more of a generic event being triggered from our widget, whether it would actually be better to bind the event the other way around so that the widget binds to the level and calls that instead. That's a possibility, but I will have to do some investigation to figure that out. I'll just close that one. That was just a random widget that we created. So what we've achieved then is we've recreated the root menu in a widget. The graph designer mode is still ridiculously laggy, so it is unorganized, not laid out as best as we want it to, and the research menu again is not complete. But we have provided the proof of concept that we can use the widgets to transition between the two menus. Now, obviously in this case I've changed the kind of mechanism. Before with the actor based menu, we were triggering a specific function or specific event for each different menu, and we've improved that by use of the enum, but we could have obviously done that in both cases. So again, as it stands, there is no clear benefit to using the widgets and the actors at the level of this event kind of interaction. But I think one of the key things that does work well, once it all lines up, is the fact that the UI, if you can see that the user interface stuff is kind of moving around independently to the map components. That's the kind of UI anchoring and scaling thing working there. Now, it's not anchored to the right point. It needs to be anchored perhaps to the bottom left, so that it's always the same position from the bottom left, rather than kind of being anchored slightly off screen, which means it's falling off screen even more. But that's definitely something I can improve on. And that should mean that full screen will at least appear reasonable. Obviously it's still going to look pretty pixelated, but it looks like the actors are actually scaling fairly well anyway, so again, perhaps we don't benefit much from having the widgets as widgets still, but I think it certainly feels like it's the right way to go with it, even if I have yet to find a distinct reason why it should be done this way as opposed to the way that we were doing it before. So I think that'll be enough for today. We've made some improvements, I think, generally to the flow and the control of the widgets, but it has raised a couple of issues that I have to go away and try and figure out how to best handle. So tomorrow should be back again approximately 9 o'clock, or it's probably nearer to 9:30 these days, but about that time. And we'll continue working on excuse me, the menu and the menu interaction. I'll see if I can sort out at least the menus that we've got, plus perhaps another one or two, just so we've got the proper flow, and try and avoid the designer if it's still laggy tomorrow. But yeah, so that's small progress on the menu, and that'll be all for tonight. So thanks for watching, and hope you come back to see more. Good night.